I want you to start today by asking yourself a question. And I want you to think about it. I want you to hear it, and I want you to think about it before you ever formulate a response. Just hear the question, ponder it, and then you can think about what you mean. Does the family matter? Does the family matter? I'm so glad that you are with me today. I'm Jonathan Burns, and thank you for joining me on Walking with the Word, where we seek to take the Bible and learn how we can live more and more every day. We're looking at a theme today of how to build a godly family in a troubled world. How would you answer that question? Would you say that the family is important? I believe that no matter where you land, religiously, politically, socially, we understand that the family has a value. Now I think the question becomes, where is the value? And where do we lay that value when we're thinking about the family? And that's what I want to explore today. In our world that's filled with chaos, political turmoil, global turmoil, how do we develop our families so that we have something that will survive and something that will last? I want to give you 3 principles today on walking with the Word, on building your family. Number 1, we've got to call it like it is. We've got to tell them how it is. And number 3, we've got to show them how it is so that we can build families that truly make a difference. Let's talk about calling it like it is. Now, what I mean by that is we need to talk about the family in terms that are just simple and that are just plain. Now, biblically speaking, there are 2 terms I want you to see. And then what I want to do is I want to look at some quotes from our world about the family, about things that are going on in our society, and try to make sense of these things, and then come back to these 2 words. And let's make some definitions therein. The 2 words are these, from Ephesians 5:22 and Ephesians 5:25, wives, husbands. Those are 2 very important words. We'll define them in just a moment. Let's, at this point, look at some things that come from our world. Let's look at some research, and let's look at some quotes from some people that have to do with the family. In a 2015 study, Pew Research, a liberal think tank reported that the percentage of children under 18 living with 2 parents in their first marriage fell from 73% in 1960 to 46% in 2014. What that means is the families in the United States, they have went from 73% of families that stay together, first marriages that last, down to 46% of families, first marriages in 2014. So from 1960 to 2014, the percentage of families that are staying together, the percentage of marriages that are staying together has been steadily on the decline. Now, there may be many reasons why you believe this is true, but research goes on and believes that liberalism has influenced and infiltrated popular culture. And they go on to say, when you think about these things, that media, individuals, celebrities, these desires of personal go over the responsibilities that we have. Movies, music, television shows constantly push the message that personal happiness is the ultimate goal, regardless of the cost of others. I think that's true. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason that marriages are failing or the only reason that families are having problems, but certainly in our society, as well as beginning in the global sense of our world, is this push of me, of self, of being the most important person in the room, and I think that is dangerous. Liberalism in that arena, not talking about Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal, just liberal mindsets, these wild open mindsets concerning the family of a father and a mother. You see, the nuclear family, the father, the mother, the children, the biblical family is under attack. When you keep reading and doing research of these things, you will find a variety of issues that come up. Listen to what this particular scene says. What we need now more than ever is a return to values that have sustained societies for generations. Family, community, responsibility, and respect for tradition. Liberalism, with its emphasis on self-centered goals and disregard for collective well-being, has shown itself to be an ideology that ultimately leads to societal decay. What's the idea here? When we leave the family, when we seek after self, we're going to find problems. Matter of fact, there are many people who have things to say about the family. Listen to this quote from Sophia Lewis. She says that family abolition should take place, suggesting that the traditional family structures can be restrictive and that care responsibilities should be communal. In other words, let's restructure the family. Let's restructure man and woman. Let's restructure the world, and everything's going to be better. Well, let's go back to two words. Wives, husbands. Now, the big question becomes, how do you define these two words? How do you define wives? How do you define husbands? That's the question. Well, in Matthew chapter 19, when people brought a question about marriage to Jesus, He asked this question, have you not read that He which made them in the beginning made them male and female? Now we're defining these two words, male and female. We need to call it like it is. If we want to have families that survive, it requires a male and it requires a female. And it requires those in Ephesians 5:22 to submit, and it requires those in Ephesians 5:25 to love. Now those two words, they can be dangerous. The world does not like the word submit. And honestly, if we're honest, we as individuals don't like it either. The world loves the word love, but the world likes to define the word love, and sometimes we do too, as the word accept. That's not what the word love means. The word love is not all accepting. However, there is within the family dynamic given by God, submitted in the beginning, Genesis 1, 2, and 3, reinforced by Jesus in Matthew 5 and Matthew 19, and reinforced all throughout the New Testament, is husbands and wives who are worthy. And listen to this, it's a husband of whom lives as if his wife can submit to him. It is a wife who lives as if his husband or her husband can love her. Matter of fact, the emphatic emphasis of Ephesians 5:25 is a husband who dies for his wife. Husbands have to be worthy of submitting to, and wives have to be worthy of dying for. But here's something I want you to see. It's the emphasis of calling it like it is. How do you build a family that's going to survive turmoil in our world? Well, wives and husbands, to your own. Love your own. I think that's pretty simple, isn't it? When we follow the biblical plan. Ephesians 5:22 says, as to the Lord, Ephesians 5:22, just as Christ also died. Oh, there's a plan being put into place. And I believe in Ephesians 5, it culminates in verse 21, submitting to one another in the fear of God. Do we respect God enough to follow His plan? If we're going to build a family, let's call it like it is. Number two, let's tell them how it is. Now, what I mean by this is, in the first place, we talked about marriage, husbands and wives. In the second place, we have to talk about children. Now, I love my two boys. I have two boys, and one is just like his mother. In other words, he's much more reserved, and he's much more calm, and he's much more quiet. And one is much more like his father, and he is loud, and he is boisterous, and he is energy, and he's like his daddy. Children are different. All throughout the world, children are different. But one of the things we need to do is we need to tell them how it is. We need to tell them what's right and what's wrong. We need to tell them that discipline is a real thing, and we need to enforce that. We need to tell them that there is a standard that they have to live by, and we've got to hold them to that. But by the way, we've got to tell them there's a standard for us. We'll talk about that in just a minute, and show them how it is. But in tell them how it is, we've got to give them something that has longevity. I've put a lot of thought into this, and here is my observation of the hardest thing in parenting. The hardest part of parenting is not in the early days when all you are is exhausted. Oh, you remember those days. It's not those days when the children become busy and you feel like all you're doing is just running and running and running. That's not the hardest part. The hardest part of being a parent is to raise your children for when you are gone. And there's the emphasis that we have to look at today. In Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And there's two ways to look at this passage. One is that you train a child in a profession, in a career. The other is you train a child to follow God. Let me illustrate something to you. Let's do both. Let's give our children a profession that will sustain them. For some, that might mean a college degree. For others, that might mean a technical school. For others, it might mean something different altogether. Know your children. Train them. Raise them. Be with them. Show them. Train them up in the way they should go. In other words, give them everything that you can to give them the advantage. But don't miss this. Heaven is so valuable. Heaven is so valuable. Heaven is so valuable. You see the emphasis there? I want to train my boys that when I am gone, they will be Christians. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, to pull this together, there are a number of passages I need you to see, and you'll need to study these on your own. It's Deuteronomy 6, 7 through 25. Psalm 78, 3 through 7. Ephesians 6, 4. 2 Timothy 3:15. Go study them. Figure out how to tell them how it is. Here's number 3. Show them how it is. Now, I want you to read a passage, and then I want you to see a phrase that I believe in. It's Joshua 24:15. And if it seem evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of which your fathers served that were on the other side of the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whom land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Show them how it is. Lead by example. Now, what I want you to understand is this. Moms and dads, they are people. But here's this. They are not perfect. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. We're not perfect. Now, we certainly try to make our wrongs right. We certainly try to repent, to change when needed. But you need to understand, you're not perfect. And thus that great command by Joshua, who was not perfect, we're going to serve the Lord. There's the emphasis. I've got to figure out what I must do to show them what is valuable. Now, I want you to go look at 1 Kings 18:21 and John 6:67. Especially John 6:67, where you have Jesus, the ultimate example of leadership. Do you also want to go away? You know, we need to show them how it is. We need to call it like it is. Husbands and wives need to be husbands and wives. Men and women, there's the emphasis. They're not perfect, but they love and they submit. We need to tell them how it is. Give them a way to live. Give them a way to survive. Give them a future, but give them heaven. There's the emphasis. And then we've got to show them how it is. I've got to live. You have to live in order to show Christ as the priority. How to build a godly family in a troubled world. Well, here's the best advice I can give you. Do it. Don't worry about it what everybody else is doing. Do it. When you make a mistake, make it right. Love your children, love God, and go to heaven. I'm Jonathan Burns. Thank you so much for joining me on Walking with the Word as we study God's book.